All right, welcome in. I am Jim Gazzale alongside Gio Sette. Welcome to Pass the Wire TV. Tonight, we're going to run through all 10 horses in the Belmont Stakes. Gio, great to be with you. Thanks for joining me. How's Belmont Week treating you so far?
Jim, I'll tell you, there's very few people that have been as excited and as pumped up as I am for this event. I always am, but to say the least, we're not exaggerating in any way. I literally, over the last 48 hours, have probably handicapped between past performances, my pedigree scales, and my race review about 30 of the 48 hours. So I'm all in.
Yeah, you worked 17 of the remaining 18, and you got a 1 hour long workout in.
Actually, exactly, folks. I work full time too, but this week has been a big week for me, and I'm very happy to be doing this show with you, Jim. Excited to talk about the Belmont Stakes. That's for sure.
Yeah. I was seeing a bunch of the stuff that you've been posting on Twitter the last couple of days, and the Belmont's for most horse players, obviously one of the most looked forward to races, anticipated races of the year. It's one of mine as well. And I recall a handful of good plays on Belmont Day that come to mind. Palace Malice is one. I was telling you earlier when we were on the phone, I had a nice pick four with Tonalist back in the day. I had Destin that just got beat, by a whisker by Creator a handful of years ago. Then, a couple of others, but the one sort of Belmont Stakes memory that always sticks out for me is American Pharaoh, and obviously winning the Triple Crown. But I'd been going to the Belmont at Belmont Park every year with my dad and my uncle, and I was on my honeymoon when American Pharaoh won the Belmont. And I think my dad was pretty pissed because he ended up not going himself because he didn't want to go alone. Since I was, enjoying being a newlywed. So we missed that one, but, luckily enough, we caught the next one with Justified just a few years later. So that's probably my fondest Belmont Stakes memory, perhaps for maybe the wrong reason, I guess.
Okay, listen, great stuff. And listen, there's always going to be something else going on, but I can understand what you're saying about missing that, the electricity of that day, because it was what, 37 years since a horse won the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say, first things first, listen, I'm such a historian and lover of this sport. And I too, growing up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, I went to a few dozen Belmont Stakes. I always went to Belmont. And one of the things I wanted to say, and John touched on this a few days ago on another show, is listen, it's not the test of champions, because I understand historically that's what it is. But the test of champions is to run your third race in 5 weeks and go 1.5 miles. So even though it's intriguing, and this year it's a nice field, and it's always compelling and always historical, the Belmont Stakes is what it is. A national audience. Going 1.25 miles at Saratoga is a nice, colorful asterisk. And, I can't get that out of my head. Now, me personally, the Belmont at 1.5 miles, I've had such great success over the years, crushing a few. I mean, in precise order, like having an exact and being confident about, and then winning is the best feeling in the world. Going back, I just put the last 10 years in front of me. Over the decade, I would say that long stretch run with Essential Quality and Hot Rod Charlie was exciting for me, because they basically went the last eighth of the mile, just 1-2 together, and every year another part of history is developed at the Belmont Stakes, any undercard. It's always fun. It's always exciting. And there's extra spice of it being in Saratoga this year. Look, they're going through the renovation, but it's just not the test of champions with me anymore. It's a big race, but not a test of a champion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I see what you're saying. And maybe I half agree. I'm not one for asterisk this, asterisk that. I mean, play the cards you're dealt. They're running 1.25 miles at Saratoga. There's no Triple Crown on the line, so I guess we kind of escape that sort of debate. But I still think that winning this race will go a long way in deciding some end of season awards for
No
the
doubt.
3-year-olds.
No doubt. And to add to that, Jim, listen, it's at Saratoga. We know what's happening at Belmont. And, a few years ago, when I think Tis the War won in the COVID year.
Yep.
And it was awkward because there was nobody there. So
Right.
Watching a race with no crowd, and the crowd's part of it. I mean, Saratoga will be packed to the gills. What are they going to have? I think it fits only like 48 to 50,000, and that's what the crowd's going to be. If you and forget about the spillage into the grandstand or in the picnic area.
Oh yeah. It'll be jammed, but it'll be exciting. Anytime they're running at Saratoga, it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, beautiful thing.
All right, let's take a look at the runners in this year's Belmont Stakes. At a field of 10, which I think was to be expected. I don't think anybody was anticipating this being a super short field. So you've got the Derby winner, Mystic Dan, in the 3-hole, 5-1 on the morning line, third choice. Seize the Gray, Preakness winner, breaking from the rail, 8-1. And then the two favorites, morning line favorites, Sierra Leone, obviously runner up in the Derby by a nose, 9-5, breaks from post 9, and then the lightly raced but ultra impressive and ultra exciting Mindframe, 7-2, breaking from the far outside. That's your field of 10. So let's get into the PPs with the daily racing form. As we pull it up here, let's kick it off with Seize the Gray. Obviously, Preakness winner. Really kind of broke best of all that day and took everybody around the merry-go-round. And looking at the run line there, it's he's ahead by 2 lengths the entire way. Nobody could catch him. Certainly a quality horse in my view. Prior to the Preakness won the Pat Day Mile, so he won on Derby Day at that mile distance. Stretched out a little bit further in the Preakness for that, and ran his best race. My concern with him obviously would be just the number of races in such a short period of time. He's run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 races basically since that last week of February. To his credit, it seems like he's been improving each time out, but at a certain point, you got to think that some fatigue is going to set in with him. So we'll see. I'm not terribly sold on this horse. Would be a fantastic story if he was able to pull it off. And kind of adding to that is that he's a son of Arrogate who has that 1.25 mile track record at Saratoga when he won the Travers. I believe it was that 2016, I think. So a decent storyline, but not one that I feel like I don't think he's sitting on another move forward, which he would need, I think, to be a serious contender in here. That's my view.
Okay, awesome, Jim. And to some points, I definitely agree on, especially how you mentioned how often he's raced, and there could be the potential fatigue issue. But here's the way I break down Season Day right now. Season Gray right now. What he pulled off in the Preakness, I applaud him. I give him the respect, especially to the coach. And it's a great story with the ownership, having 2,500 plus owners as part of the My Horse campaign with that horse. However, Muth scratching, obviously, it was extremely impactful. And then collectively on Preakness Day, 4 horses did not run to what I felt was their potential. So when those horses faltered and Seize the Gray got out and he took to the track excellent and there was no pressure, it was a steal. So Seize the Gray seized the day. He did. What I admire about this guy as a horse racing enthusiast is that he's now going to be racing over his 6th surface in 6 races. Another thing you don't see that often. So he's got to be shipped, bussed, barn, flown, and he's gotten better over the last few races. However, as much as I admire that, I felt like even if he matched his effort, I don't think it's going to be good enough at the Belmont. This is a different animal at 1.25 miles. The same time frame, because he won the Pate Mile on Derby Day on the undercard. So now he needs to win 3 races in 5 weeks. If I saw greatness earlier on, or as a juvenile coming into his 3-year-old campaign, then I would say, yeah, I think it can happen. But to do that, you really have to be great. And there's some horses in this race that are just better on paper and where they stand right now leading to this Belmont Stakes. So my hat's off to him. However, if Seize the Gray wins, Gio Sette loses. So as much as I think he'll be a pace factor, I think I have him somewhere in the category of finish 6th or 7th in this race.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Just the lack of pressure or challenge in the Preakness. I mean, they basically handed him that race on the backstretch. It seemed when nobody was going after him, and he showed in the Pate Mile that he can rate off of horses and pass a few late. And I think that's most likely how the pace is going to set up, I think, in the Belmont. I'd have to assume, and we'll get to Dornoch, but I would have to assume Dornoch is going to try and go up to the front along with Mindframe. So, not as easy of a lead for Seize the Gray, which perhaps even on paper doesn't even look like he might even want the lead or need the lead, but definitely not going to have it as easy as he had it in the Preakness, in my view.
And same here, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. So resilience coming out of the Kentucky Derby. And I think what was interesting to me about this horse was the fact that they weren't talking about this horse running in the Belmont until about a week ago. And he just sort of popped up on the Belmont Stakes probable list, and which suggests to me that, obviously we got to trust Belmont, but just suggests that the horse came out of the Derby in good shape, and they think he's going to fire a really solid effort here. I think he lost nothing in the Derby, was was in contention there at the top of the stretch, and just kind of, gave way a little bit. But he was never really far off of those fractions, which were, certainly swift up front in the Derby. And I think he represented himself quite well, being able to hang on there and finish sixth. One back of that, the Wood Memorial, he won that. I thought that was a good race. It was got a little goofy there with that horse going down a couple of lengths behind him there and at the top of the stretch there. So kind of a little bit of a goofy finish, but I liked him that day, and I thought he ran well winning that race. Win contender, I don't see it, but certainly a horse for me that I'm going to be using in some exotic bets like the exacta and the trifecta.
Okay, interesting. And I remember, you were very strong on him over in the Wood Memorial, and that was a nice win for you, man. He had a great trip, and he ran his race, and he won rather easily.
Yeah.
But my take on resilience. First things first, the notes I put, and folks, I got my racing form right here. I know it's on the screen for you guys, but I'm going over my markings. I did not like that it took him, a handful of races to graduate, but most of them were as a 3-year-old. I was impressed with him in the Wood Memorial, albeit it wasn't a super fast race, but he was the best in the field, and he got the job done. The Kentucky Derby had mixed emotions. I went back and I watched the race, and he said, let me follow resilience. And he was mixed up in the whole bunch, and he did make a move. And the move actually threw off Larry Colmus because he pulled him in the stretch when it wasn't him. But he was making his presence felt, right? He thought, he missed the call, and Larry Colmus is a consummate professional. And he just used Resilience name because he did see him make a move, and he just wasn't the one he was referring to in a stretch. But look, Belmont, great respect for Belmont. This colt isn't into mischief. I think he's going to have a good career. I don't think 1.25 miles is out of the question for him. However, I would have liked to see, if the 7 starts, a race that made me say, wow, a robust buyer number. He's got steady numbers, but none of them, it doesn't make you jump off the page. And I said, wow, to a shorter degree in the Wood Memorial, maybe because I also had, Society Man coming in underneath him, which gave me a monster exacta. But this is a horse that I think will be successful as the year goes around in this field, because that's what we're doing. We're handicapping the race, considering him against the others in the race. Yeah, I have him as a lower gimmick type of proposition, running his race, and potentially, I had him ranked 5th here on my list. 5th/6th, and it's a 10-horse field, so others are much more appealing to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. That last workout though, 2 days ago, on June 2nd, over the Oklahoma training track, apparently was not a wow race, but a wow workout, according to some of the workout experts. Just looking at the times from his past workouts, going back to February, and this was the fastest one at 48 flat for 4 furlongs.
Over the Saratoga Oval. Absolutely. Listen, that opened my eyes, and I have great respect for Belmont. I just, I'm comparing his chances of emerging victorious against the whole field, and
sure,
it'd be a major upset to me if he pulled it off.
Oh yeah. All right, so the Derby winner, Mystic Dan, and I think for me, the thing that I've kind of adapted my handicapping, especially in these big stakes races where the horses are running more or less in a more predictable, more consistent fashion. They're the best quality, right? So you have a good representation of who they are and what they're capable of. And I've noticed myself sort of gravitating more towards horses that are able to deal with adversity, show a little bit of guts, and not be afraid to get into a little bit of a dogfight and continue on. And Mystic Dan did that and more in the Kentucky Derby when Brian Hernandez took him, between another horse and the rail, in a spot that probably wasn't fully available, and the horse loved it and was able to carry on through there and really put the winning distance he needed between him and the rest of the field there. Even before they got to the 8th pole, it looked like. So that to me is impressive. I think it speaks volumes about the horse. And no knocks on this horse whatsoever. And I know we're looking at the daily racing form here where he followed up that 100 Beyer speed figure in the Derby with a 97 in the Preakness. I'm a tried and true Brisnet player. So looking at the Brisnets here on another screen, he went 92 speed figure in that 3rd place finish in the Arkansas Derby, 97 winning the Kentucky Derby, and then a career top 102 finishing 2nd in the Preakness. So I think this horse is still very much on the improve, even though he's run, it'll be 3 races in the last 5 weeks. Perhaps another scenario where he's getting a little bit tired, like we talked about with the potential fatigue factor with Seize the Gray. But I'm willing to give him another green light, and I think he's sitting on another good move forward. And I think he's a top contender in this race. I'm not necessarily going to pick him to win, but I think he's a deserving, top choice, I guess. Deserving top choice in this race for Mystic Dan, in my view.
Jim, interesting. And you know what? You said a lot there, and you said it really properly. I gravitated to a lot that you shared. However, I have some similar thoughts, but I have a couple other things to throw in there as well, because I find the horse fascinating too. He did have the wow race that I'm looking for in the Southwest. So I know what he's capable of to make me say, wow, to make me watch the race replay a few times. Now, many people felt that race, when it happened in the spring or in February, it was all about the slop, right? And since then, his Arkansas Derby wasn't much to write home about, but he was beaten by Muth, who we know who Muth is and how good Muth is, who probably could have been the Preakness winner if he didn't have a fever. And then what he did in the Kentucky Derby and Preakness shows that he's a pro. So I respect the connections. I respect the horse. I think he's worthy of good talk of being a top 3-year-old. Is he the best 3-year-old out there? No, not to me. But is he a top 4 3-year-old? You can make an argument about that. You
Oh
really
yeah,
can. You can make an
for sure.
argument about it. Going into this race, for the same reasons I talked about Seize the Grey. Now, in my opinion, Mystic Dan, if he raced Seize the Grey 20 times, he'd beat Seize the Grey, in my opinion, 16 or 17 times. But they don't run races like that. What I'm trying to say is Seize the Grey is running the fifth time the third time in 5 weeks. And so is Mystic Dan. I think Mystic Dan is a lot more capable to pull that off, to run well and be a contender for the third time in 5 weeks. When I finished my handicap on this race, I marked 2 things with this guy. I felt like him and the relationship he has with Brian Hernandez is big time. I think Ken McPeak is a charismatic, confident guy, and I knew he wasn't going to run Torpedo Anna in this race and Mystic Dan. We know Torpedo Anna is going to go in the Acorn. She'll be favored there. This horse is deserving to be a contender. The fact that he's made it the distance made me feel that he's a contender. But grudgingly, now I'm going to use him in my superfecta gimmick. But if I was going to play a multi-race wagering ticket, which I'm probably not going to use Mystic Dan on that ticket. But do I think he'll run well and be respectable? Yeah, I just think he's going to get out-finished. And I see him, if someone pushed me against the wall, I'd probably call it that he'd run 4th in this field. Maybe
no argument there. The Wine Steward has always kind of intrigued me. I like this horse going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year at Santa Anita before he scratched. I didn't read the article, but I saw a headline today that perhaps the horse was dealing with a bit of allergies, and that's why we've kind of seen a little bit of a slow start to the year. They had that big break between October and April, which, I think probably hindered him a little bit in that Lexington and maybe even in the Peter Pan as well. So I think this horse is coming around to a nice effort here, being 3 off the layoff. Just looking at some stats here, Mike Maker, 21%, third race off a layoff, 53% in the money with over 300 starters. So I would say that's a pretty solid body of work to have some robust numbers like that. The other thing that was really interesting with this horse is this horse has never been further than like 2 lengths off the lead at any point in any of his 6 career races. He's won 3. He's finished second in 3. Seems like that type that I was, kind of describing with Mystic Dan, just like willing to be in the mix and is not afraid of being around other horses. And I think this horse is coming around to a nice effort. Is he going to win in my view? No, but he's definitely a horse that I'm going to be including in my exotic wagers, exacta, trifectas, superfectas, much like I mentioned with Resilience. But I've liked this horse since the end of last year, and I feel like that slow start, we can give him a little bit of a pass for it and see. I guess in my view, this is that race. It's like, you got to show me now. 3 off the layoff. You've had 2 close finishes in second your first 2 starts this year, and yeah, I'm banking on a nice run to get him in the money.
Well, I'm happy you say that. You know why? because you, in a lot of ways, preaching to the choir here. I got a lot to say about this horse. I've been very, and it's hard for me to say very, but I've been very impressed with basically every one of his races in terms of his combination of behavior, willingness to run, dueling, fighting, always in the mix, reliable, dependable. 6 races, 5 different tracks. 3rd race is a 3-year-old. I loved his dad. I made a ton of money when Vino Rosso won the Breeders' Cup Classic. It was one of my joyous Breeders' Cup Classics because I had him tied into everything. So I'm a big Vino Rosso fan, and he's been a good sire. To add to that, I embrace what you shared about Mike Maker. I think Mike Maker he's recognized, but he's sort of underrated in the grand national scope in all races because they think of Mike Maker, medium range turf trainer, claims, runs for Richer, and so on. But he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Now, I would have liked to see Sayaz on this horse because I'm a big Sayaz fan. But obviously, Sayaz had a commitment with Dornoch. But Manny Franco knows Saratoga very well. This horse is going to be forwardly. And by the way, I said this to John the other day, John, our Pick 6 King crew chief. In my opinion, the Wine Steward's the best New York bred in training. This is a New York bred that acts like he's bred in Kentucky. He's like an open company horse, and so thumbs up for the New York breds. He's run well in open company. In my opinion, even though he's not a grade 1 winner, he's proven in the grade 1, his race at Keeneland. He just missed to lock. Encino was one of the better horses in training until he got scratched where we didn't get to see him in the Derby. And he just missed against Encino. He just missed against one of his foes in the race, Antiquarian.
Yeah.
This guy is a hard hitter. And I don't think I'm insulting the audience by saying he's got balls. I like a horse with guts.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning, and you're going to know who I'm going to say is going to win this race in resounding fashion. But this guy is going to be there in the mix. I believe he has 1.25 miles. And I think at a price, there's a good chance he lasts for second. And if he doesn't last for second, he gets beat late and he's third. So the Wine Steward to me is an exotics must at a price because he's done nothing but exhibit everything you want a racehorse to do. Now, some would argue, I'm going to make one more point, and I got to him, and I'm speaking a lot because it's one of the horses I like in the race. He hasn't run that fast race yet. Well, if you think about conditioning and the fact that he's run over Saratoga and raced well, he won, ran an 86, favored that day. Horses are creatures of habit. When you run well at Saratoga and you come back to Saratoga, history shows it. You run well again. I think Wine Steward is going to be, I'd love for him to be second because he's going to be an exacta play on my part. But I would not be surprised if he's in your triple, and certainly not surprised if he lasts to be in your superfecta. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that he's a New York bred. That's always exciting. And just one last quick note on him, this kind of rounding into form. I feel like just looking at the Brisnets, and I know it's not up on the screen, so it might be hard to envision, but they give you an early pace figure, a middle pace figure, and a late pace figure. And when I see those three figures getting higher and higher and higher, it suggests to me that you're building your momentum, you're building your stamina. So in his last race in that Peter Pan, early pace 84, that E2 figure is a 90, and that late pace figure is a 92. So a nice positive distribution of energy. Vino Rosso, obviously not going to be the distance. It shouldn't be a challenge at all. So that suggests to me that he's, like, to your point, Gio, about the conditioning aspect. I feel like he's right there, and this is the opportunity to put it all together.
And I got one other thing to add. I forgot. I have it here in pink.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said something else. What if it rains? What if it's damp? Look at his workout at Churchill in the mud. 47-2 breezy. Vino Rosso was also a horse that can handle the wet. So now if it turns up wet, on top of everything we discussed, the Wine Steward has a quality work in the mud. In the mud. So, listen, when I see that board and I see him potentially at 17, 18, 19 to 1, that's a steal with a horse showing and exhibiting that form with that pedigree.
Yeah. Just one last note. I've been using this Race Lens product from Equibase, which I really like. And it's saying that the true odds on the Wine Steward should be 11 to 1. So we're almost undoubtedly going to get higher than that. So just another bit of information as we move on to Antiquarian, the winner of that Peter Pan Stakes last time out, the local prep, if you will, for the Belmont Stakes. And no real knocks on this horse, I guess. To my earlier point on the Wine Steward, just another sort of positive distribution of energy for Antiquarian in that Peter Pan. Popped a 95 late pace figure, which is good. I generally like to see that. Peter Pan was a fine race. I think it speaks a lot when you've got the top three finishers coming out of that to contest the Belmont. Typically, correct me if I'm wrong, if but it generally feels like it's usually only the winner of the Peter Pan that comes out of that to contest the Belmont. So I feel like it speaks a little bit to the quality of those.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
To those top three finishers coming back in here. A limited body of work, I guess. 2 for 4 lifetime. Do I think he's going to win? No. But do I think he can run well and be in the mix for some of the exotic bets? Definitely.
Interesting. And, I have some points that will sort of bridge or add to some of the points that you made. First things first, a no on Gio Setti's list to win the Belmont Stakes is, to me, you need to run as a juvenile. This guy has only run as a 3-year-old. Now, it's a little different because this isn't the 1.5-mile Belmont. It's not the Test of Champions. Now, I think I could have even had a conversation with you offline when we talked about a few lightly raced horses who won the Belmont. One that came to my mind was Tonalist. Now, Tonalist, I know for a fact he ran as a juvenile. I think it was in Florida. Then he ran in the winter. Then he won the Peter Pan. Yeah. And then he won the Belmont Stakes. If my memory stands correct. I don't know if you want to look it up to verify it. Now, Antiquarian, am I right?
I'm looking it up right now.
I don't have anything in front of me, but Toneless was built like a monster. That was a big, imposing colt. And he still ran as a juvenile. I'd be shocked if he didn't. So I'll keep talking about Antiquarian. Now, Antiquarian does have the Louisiana Derby. And if you watch that race, you see the antics at the gate, what happened?
Yeah.
The breakthrough and, so what Pletcher did to get him ready for the Peter Pan to win, that was very impressive. So because of that and because of the conditioning, I think this guy's in good shape. And I wouldn't be surprised if he moved forward from that and run an improved race. Now, I'm a bias guy. He went back-to-back 92s, which is similar to, I know there's different elements involved, but on the Thoroughgraph, he's sort of going back-to-back matching races or moving, showing an indication that he's moving forward. I do see another forward move by this guy, even though it violates something I want to see. I want my horse to win the Belmont who has run as a juvenile. But that always came into play with 1.5-mile distances. But because it's Johnny V, and I feel that this guy will be tactical, I think he'll make a run at it. But in my opinion, based on his daddy, I don't know if he's going to get 1.25 miles. And the 1.25 miles, I would not like him if it was 1.5 miles. The 1.25 miles could be an issue. If that's the case, I see him in the mix, turning for home. But that last 1/8 of a mile, the 8th pole on, I don't know. I like a horse like Wine Steward more to last, and a few others we haven't gotten into who are going to be coming on. So it was tough. But I have Antiquarian as a deeper gimmick possibility, 5th on my list.
Yeah. And you're right. He did run once. Toneless did as a juvenile in a maiden special weight, and he finished 4th. Didn't break his maiden until
3-year-old.
the January of his 3-year-old season. Broke his maiden, finished 2nd in allowance optional claimer. Won the Peter Pan, won the Belmont, 2nd in the Jim Dandy, 3rd in the Travers.
Yeah. He had a big year, and he won races as a 4-year-old too. And then I think he retired.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're halfway through. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to finish the rest of this field of 10. Stick with us. All right. We are back. Jim Gazzale, Gio Sette, Past the Wire TV, halfway home, breaking down all of the horses set to go to the post for the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga on Saturday. The 6-hole, Dornoch, and this horse is just a total toss for me. This horse was a total toss for me in going into the Derby, and he came back and beat Sierra Leone in the Remsen. When was that? In December last year, and he followed that up with a win in the Fountain of Youth, which, if you recall, scratched to the tiniest of fields, and then scratched even further. I think they pulled a horse off the out of this, basically out of the starting gate as they were getting warmed up. So he didn't really beat anybody that day. The second and third place finishers in that race were Ladombro and Frankie's Empire. I haven't been impressed with this horse in his 3-year-old season. I thought Danny Gargan saying, nobody's going to be faster than us early on in the Derby. Obviously he was breaking from the rail, so didn't really have any other choice. But he was still, he was still 12th, in the first quarter mile. So it just didn't work out for him. I have to figure in a smaller field, breaking from the middle here, he'll be forwardly placed, and that's where he does his best running, as we've seen. So maybe that's a step up for him, to kind of recapture some of that form that it appears that he lost. But yeah, this one's just not for me. Others are better, faster, stronger, more appealing. The bluegrass really, like, I don't know. I didn't understand the decision to rate him there. I think, they said that they were already in the Derby, so they were going to just try it out. And it obviously failed. And I feel like they were just kind of protecting themselves because they knew that the horse was kind of in deep water against that field that signed up that day. And they're just trying to protect themselves, protect the horse with those comments. And I just haven't been impressed with this horse at all this year. And he's not for me. If Dornoch wins, I lose everything on the day.
All right. Well, interestingly enough, and I hear what you're saying. I got some information to sort of counter or to make you think a little differently. But I certainly respect your opinion because I know many feel the same way. But I did some real intense film study on this guy. And I knew a lot about him before this race, obviously, because we did so much work going into the Kentucky Derby. I said, let me revisit it. First things first, he did have a very promising juvenile campaign. He was always well bet. Forget about the race that he came back to beat Sierra Leone. Totally different circumstance, and he'll never beat Sierra Leone again. However, as a juvenile, he raced well all 4 times over 4 different surfaces, right? He was well bet every race. There were some horses in those races who came back and won. But now let's fast forward into his 3-year-old campaign. The Fountain of Youth was a joke because the 3 competitive contenders in the race all scratched before post time, like you said. So I'm adding to that. But then I said, let me dig a little deeper into the bluegrass, which I commend Just a Touch for running the race that he did. But the pace was really fast. And Dornoch, he was sort of on the pace. I knew he wasn't going to last, and he folded and he got beat by better horses. But then the Kentucky Derby, and I remember Danny Gargan, you actually could have had the interview with him. Obviously, because he drew the 1 hole, he said he was going to go out. And with Louise on him, one of arguably a top 3 jockey to me, I was dead surprised too. Around the first turn, he was nowhere there. But the form says he was checked hard and he shuffled back. So when a horse loses early momentum like that, and then you're in that ridiculous mix that the Kentucky Derby is, again, horses are creatures of habit. So I said, let me look at the pedigree. What if it's wet? We don't know right now. It could be dry, but I'm making the point if it's wet. I know a lot about Good Magic. Good Magic was second in the Derby. Good Magic locally here crushed everybody in the Haskell. Good Magic has been a very, very good sire. And obviously there's a relationship. Is this the horse that had that relationship with Mage who won the Kentucky Derby, like brothers or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with that said, entering this Belmont Stakes, and then me realizing that he's a real good-looking colt. Meaning, I used to love this horse a few years back who sadly passed away, Midnight Bourbon. It was in the Asmussen Barney. He died. Yeah. But I used to love the way he ran, and he was a monster of a horse, a beautiful coat, and he'd be on the lead, or next to the lead. Dornoch, the physicality reminds me somewhat of him, and I'm a big Louise fan. So when I looked at this race, I said, my gosh, he drew the 6-hole. Who else is going to go out? Now, if it's dry, I think he's going to be out sprinted, and I'm not going to feel the same way. But if it's wet, with that Good Magic pedigree and the 2 races he has in the wet, coupled with Louise, because this, let's face it, big stage, big moments, big riders. It wouldn't shock me if Dornoch ran his best race as a 3-year-old. Now, is he good enough to upset the field? No. 2 others are more compelling to me. But for the Kentucky Derby, I was worried about Louise having his way, getting out of the gate and making his presence felt, maybe have a lasting ability. That didn't happen. I'm not ruling out Dornoch with Louise on a wet surface. Maybe not so much, not as much on a dry, but somewhat on a dry, but definitely on a wet, for being in the mix, second or third as they're turning for home, and who knows, the best circumstance, maybe even the lead, and just being out finished and running third or fourth. So I'm giving that level of respect. I like Dornoch a lot more than I like Caesar Gray.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he could certainly run his best race as a 3-year-old. I think that really depends on him going to the lead. I got to assume that that's what they're going to do.
If he throws a donut here, I'll be the first to say this horse sucks. He lacks heart, right? You got to have heart. But he's a good-looking horse, and he's by Good Magic.
Yeah. I don't know. There's video of him walking the shed row on the Past the Wire TV YouTube channel. Go from the last couple of days. So go take a look at that and let me know what you think.
I'm not going to use him on my multi-race wages. I'm saying I would not be surprised if I played a super key with my winner and he ended up filling the super by hanging on and running an improved race. And Luis Saez.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see it. Wouldn't be totally shocked. Protective. A tall task trying to break his maiden in the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes at Saratoga. Todd Pletcher, Mike Rapoli. You know, interestingly enough, so this horse ran what was it, 3rd in the Wood Memorial, finished 3 3/4 lengths back according to the PPs. And I was there with my dad and my brother taking in a great day at the Big A, and Mike Rapoli was standing not too far from us, and he was pumped up that this horse finished 3rd. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he's basically saying, who the hell does this? Puts this, long shot. He was 38-1 in the Wood Memorial. Who puts this maiden in the Wood Memorial and have it come in third. Mike Rapoli and Todd Pletcher. And, you know, good for them. I feel like this horse is up against it. I feel like Rapoli he's still hung up on this whole Forte thing. I don't know. It just seemed like Forte scratching out of the Derby changed him, changed him in some way. And I feel like he's just been throwing anything and everything at the wall, just trying to get something to stick. And I feel like this is just another one of those, let's see what sticks. It's a tall ask for this horse. And I would be pretty surprised if this horse won the Belmont. I don't think I'm gonna include him anywhere.
Yeah, Jim. Interesting that you mentioned. I'll tell you a little something about, and like I said, I'm old school, and maybe John or some other people may remember this. A maiden way back. It's probably early 80s. And I remember the name because he was a New York bred. Name of the horse was Shifty Chic. Ran in the Belmont Stakes, didn't win, but hit the board. Shifty Chic. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just thinking what's coming to my mind, these recollections. Anyway, Protective is a maiden. Rapoli had ups and downs with Fierceness. The glory of Fierceness winning the Florida Derby and the, like a feast of famine thing. Famine in the Kentucky Derby where the horse was highly regarded. The whole country was watching, and he quit at the top of the stretch. Oddly, Gaff Leone, who's been tossed around like a salad, if you think about since he missed winning the Kentucky Derby, right? He ends up on Protective, so he's got something to prove. Listen, Pletch has won this race 4 times. Rapoli won a few years ago with Mo Donegal.
Yeah.
Over Ness. Yeah, you can't win this race, but I have him. I put like a little asterisk saying he's improving. He's not ready now. There's so much more appeal in others. And I can't kiss all the girls or hug all the guys. So unless I went 7 deep in a superfecta wheel key, I can't use him. But do I see this horse continually to improve? Maiden Special, Wood Memorial, Peter Pan, even run in the Belmont, and then show some spunk later on in the year? Yeah, I could see that because he's under Pletcher. But, yeah, I'm not using him in this race. I can't. He's a maiden.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a bit surprising. More than a bit surprising. Honor Marie. I like this horse. I think this is one of those horses that, like we've talked about with a few others, just has some guts and was coming into the Derby off of a career best effort in the Louisiana Derby over actually it was 2 back in the Risen Star where it was super sloppy, but that Louisiana Derby where he finished second was a career best figure, and the Derby was mostly a disastrous trip for him. Got banged around pretty hard at the start, and I thought this horse showed himself quite well to fight on and finish 8th. So I'm looking for a really solid race from this one. Another one that'll probably be in the back half of the field along the back stretch. And I feel like the pace is going to set up a little bit for a runner like this to come and be in the mix late. Do I think he has a a big enough kick, a fast enough kick down the lane to outduel somebody like Sierra Leone, like we'll get to? No, but I was pretty high on this horse going into the Kentucky Derby. This was a horse that I included in a lot of my exotic plays. Maybe even had him on a pick 5 ticket too, I think. So given the trip in the Derby, feel like you can give this horse a pass, take the positives from that race and use that to your advantage here at 12-1. I think would be a fine price to get involved with. And I think this one is a strong in the money exacta trifecta superfecta contender behind Sierra Leone in my view.
Well done there, Jim, and interesting. I'm going to start.
You're like my hype man. We got to do this more often.
Oh yeah, man. I like the pairing of us, old school, new school, and you have a lot of information. But let me tell you what captivates me when I first study and look at Anna Marie. First of all, I trust the connections. Giroux, for even Whit Beckman. Now, Whit Beckman is not a nationally recognized name, but he's worked for several big-time trainers as an assistant. He's just looking to make a name more for himself being pronounced. And believe me, if he won this race, it would be on the same level as Jenna Antonucci winning last year at Arcangelo, right? First female, but, I don't know if he's won a race of this magnitude yet. Now, I trust the connections. I did give this horse a major pass in the Kentucky Derby. Again, the Kentucky Derby is what it is. We all love it, the magnitude, the pageantry. But as a gambler and a player and a handicapper, sometimes it just makes you dizzy because of all the stuff that happens. This horse did not have a fair run out of in the Kentucky Derby. So I said, let me look past that and let me do his races again. And I did he's only run at Fairgrounds in Churchill. So I don't know how he'll travel outside of those two ovals. But I trust him in the wet, if it is wet. And when you think about this entire field, you got two horses who are going to be thundering down the lane against what will be a moderate to fast pace, going 1.25 miles. So it's the beast that we're going to talk about next, and Anna Marie coming hardest, and who hangs on that was right in that mix, right? Those we talked about. The Wine Steward, Antiquarian, Mystic Dan, and so on. Who's going to have enough left? Yeah, Anna Marie, I had a hard time taking him out of my handicap, which I won't, because I think he will move forward. And if he does, he's an exotics play. Not so much to me for the exacta, because that contradicts the way I'm speaking of the horses I talked about that will be there fighting, right? So, but yeah, if number 8, Anna Marie, is on the board there, double-digit odds in the superfecta, I wouldn't be surprised. Capable horse.
Yeah. Yeah, and his late pace figures on Brisnet match up with everybody in the field. I think for the Brisnet players out there, if you're watching this, it does seem like a lot of those races at Aqueduct, especially during that Aqueduct winter meet and into that short spring meet that they have before it's switched over to Belmont at the Big A in the last couple of years, it seems like those speed figures for Brisnet and those late pace figures tend to be a little bit inflated. Like, um, Protective got 102 late pace figure in the Wood Memorial and 100 Brisnet speed figure. So like some of that seems to be a bit inflated. So I think we get a truer depiction when you're looking at these Churchill and fairground races for Honor Marie, and scratching out the Derby, late pace figures, 96 in the Louisiana Derby, 95 in the Risen Star, 102 in the Kentucky Jockey Club there at the end of his 2-year-old season. So, like you said, Gio, 2 horses are going to be coming late, and I think Anna Marie fits with that late pace with everybody else in this field. All right, Sierra Leone is my top choice. If you've been following Past the Wire for any length of time over the last couple of months, John's been on this horse since before that Remsen back in December. I've been on him since then, around that time too. I know you've liked this horse for some time as well. In my view, the best 3-year-old, ran the best race in the Derby and just missed by a nose. You could argue this horse should be undefeated, and in contention for every single accolade. I think this race sets up for him very well. He's proven himself on a fast track, on a sloppy track. He's proven himself in a fast pace like we saw in the Derby. He's proven himself in a slow pace like we saw in the Risen Star. There are few, if any, knocks on this horse. $2.3 million purchase, gun runner, everything you would want in a classic winner is Sierra Leone, and I think he wins his classic on Saturday in the Belmont by open lengths.
Strong man, my man. And you know what? You kind of stole my thunder in a lot of categories. However, I feel compelled to add to what you said. I'm glad you brought up that the horse was regally bred to win. He's not just the son of Gunrunner, which is spectacular. If you just look at the entire bloodline configuration on the dam side, Malibu Moon and Candy Ride, and 2,300,000, you're expected to win. The horse is literally a combined 7 inches from being unbeaten. His only 2 defeats were by whiskers, not even a horse's nose, inches. He's built. He's trained exceptionally well. The only thing that was marginally concerning is his propensity to lug in. So now Brown made a move, because sometimes a change is in order. Gaff Leone, who, like I said, has sort of been tossed around since that race, and he ends up on Protective in this race, but Pratt is the right choice. The only other jockey I would want on this horse right now, because I consider Pratt as lead, would be Irad. But I'm good with Pratt. To echo what you said, regardless of the pace, regardless of the condition of the track, and I told John just the other day, I said, John, You got to be creative with your bet. I think the public is going to recognize this horse's overwhelming presence as a 3-year-old. I think he could be bet down to as low as 4-5 or 3-5. When they ran the Kentucky Derby, and I was on Fierceness then, I liked Sierra Leone to close like he did. I just thought Fierceness wowed me a number of times, and the public knows I was into Fierceness because I saw Spectacular so many times. But I didn't downgrade Sierra Leone. Once Sierra Leone missed that race over Forever Young and Mystic Dan by inches, I said to John and a few other people, Belmont Stakes, 4-5. And I said it hours after the Kentucky Derby, and here we are. Yeah. And you know what? Down the lane, and I'm not even worried about the trip, this horse is going to probably win by 3 or 4 lengths. And if it's close, it's because somebody else really stepped up and ran an accelerated race from what they're used to. But I am not going past Sierra Leone in this race. I'm sorry. I've been doing this since I'm 16 years old. I've seen many horses leading to certain races as 3-year-olds. When I do my math and I do everything I have to do, I couldn't come close to trying to top this guy. He's my winner.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on those odds. I do think he's going to be the favorite, and deservedly so. But I think that there's going to be enough sort of casual money in the pools that his odds aren't going to go that low. You've got the Derby winner, which I think people will be like, oh, this horse won the Kentucky Derby. He's got to be the best. And even a larger factor, I think, is that Seize the Gray has 2,500 owners that are going to be betting him. So I feel like that those two things kind of, in my view, prevent the odds being significantly lopsided in Sierra Leone's favor.
But listen, I hear what you're saying, but real smart horsemen and the season better, not the guy eating a hot dog with his family and he's a CPA and he goes to the track once a year and he's a VP at the CPA firms. So now he's at Saratoga. Yeah, that guy could lay $100 down on whoever he wants to. But Sierra Leone wasted Seize the Gray. Think about that race in the Bluegrass. He finished ninth. What was that? My eyes are deceiving me. Is that 19 lengths or 10 lengths?
Let's see.
How far back was Seize the Gray?
10 lengths. Yeah. Absolutely dusted him for sure.
Yeah. You know, there's so much has to do with the body of work leading to the race. And as much as respect and gratitude and thumbs up I gave to BJ Hernandez and Ken McPeak for winning the Kentucky Derby, we all saw what happened. Perfect trip, right? You got through on the rail, and you missed by inches. So are we having the same doubt about the odds if Sierra Leone won by 4 inches instead of losing by 2? If he was the Derby winner?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I get your point, bud. I get your point. The crowd is going to be massive. People like to play numbers. Who's been in the news? Seize the Gray and Mystic Dan. And I said good things about Mystic Dan. I also said, hey, the coach, Seize the Gray, their ownership. But I said, if Seize the Gray is on the board, if he wins, I lose. I donate money. And I'm not going to worry about donating because that horse is not beating Sierra Leone. So let's see. It's a private bet. I think Sierra Leone is sub-even money, 4-5 or 3-5 at post time.
I don't think he gets that low.
Okay.
We'll see.
Because we have someone else to talk about. And I said, I wish Irad was on him, and Irad's on somebody else. So you could lead the way, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, Mindframe. Again, lightly raced, but those two races were rather impressive. Just just kind of the way he drew off on the field both times was impressive to me. I do think though that again, it's just another tall ask for a horse to come out of an optional claimer at a mile and a 16th to step up like this at a mile and a quarter against a quality, well-rounded field. Would I be shocked if this horse won? Absolutely not. I think it's a legitimate contender. I just think it's a lot to ask for this horse to step up and win this. He was outworking Fierceness in the lead up to this, and maybe outworked Fierceness enough to bounce Fierceness out of this field altogether, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like I said, it's asking a lot, especially at 7-2. I don't know that. I don't know. I was pretty bullish on Sierra Leone. I think I've got to dig my heels in here and be firmly against Mindframe from a wagering standpoint.
Interesting. I'm going to add some more. I agree with you wholeheartedly about how impressive he looked in his two starts. And this goes back to a conversation I could have had part with you and I had with a couple other friends. He violates the fact that I need a horse running in the Belmont who ran as a juvenile. He did not. His two races were not only this year as a 3-year-old, they were very recent. 7 furlongs and a mile and 16. Spectacular, no doubt. Eye-opening, no doubt. Is he capable of moving forward? And if he does, he's an automatic contender based on the scientific proof in the speed ratings. Thorograph, Byers, Brisnet, Ragozins. You could say it in 14 languages. The horse was impressive. Here's my other things that I would consider. Oh, Irad. Irad, let's face it, I speak enough of him. Not only is he elite, but Irad to me is not only extremely humble, but he's so decisive and so talented and so competitive. He's like a great jockey under all circumstances. So he happens to be on this horse. It's with Pletcher, who's won the race 4 times. Do I have reservations in 2 areas? I'll tell you what they are. The mile and a quarter, and I'm a pedigree guy, so I know there's Tappet and Street Sense in the bloodlines, but he's by Constitution. We talked about this earlier offline. Constitution, in my opinion, from a consistent basis, is more of a mile and an eighth type of horse, even though you got Street Scent and Tappet in the bloodlines. 600,000 is a robust price as a yearling, bred to win and win fast, and that's what he's done. One last note, 126 pounds. So now you're asking him to go a mile and a quarter, and for the casual people out there, every eighth, all right, is 220 yards. So this is, close to 500 yards or 5 football fields longer? If I got the math right. Carrying more weight than he's never carried before. And he's going to have to, even though he regressed some in his last, it's a lot to ask. So what I see him doing because of the greatness of Irad, he's going to break well. And it's important for him to get position around the first turn, and you don't want to cook somebody. And I think he'll be forwardly placed for most of the race. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of who wants it and who's going to have enough to last to have some of it, I just don't see him doing it. And if he beats me, he beats me. My respect is there big time for Pletcher, who's proven himself in this race, and Irad, who I love. But I think this horse is going to be a fading fourth. Maybe third if he really digs down deep. But I'm not using him in the exacta. I got to make a stand. And you know something? The Sierra Leone exacta Mindframe is going to be the chalk. And odds don't matter to me. If I liked him, I bury that exacta. I just don't like the exacta. There's too many. I have reservations. I don't like having reservations. Not running as a juvenile. One more point. We talked about the other horse, Antiquarian, who didn't run as a juvenile, but at least he has the Peter Pan. Mindframe runs in a maiden special where there was basically no competition, blows everybody away in his debut at 103 buyer, and then he runs in the optional claimer, and I took a good look at that race too. The competition. If he ran in a grade 3 or beat a stakes field up, then I would have been more impressed. I got to see more with this guy.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's impressive, but yeah, I just think there's not enough body of work to go off of.
Talented and impressive, both words. Very, very easily describing him. Absolutely. But you know, I listen, I feel bad, and I like the fact that he's going to take in money. And like I said, it's one of the reasons why Irad is not riding for Chad Brown, because he's on this potential superstar. But for the same reason, a lot of people faulted or shorted Fierceness. That's those same people, and I was on Fierceness. They're probably going to short him here because you're asking him to do something. Harvey Pack once said in the 80s, you know who Harvey Pack is?
Yeah.
Okay. Years ago, great guy. He passed away, but he used to say, never ask a horse to do something he's never done before. And where there's contradictions because a horse grows into his form and conquers new challenges. I just think there's just too many horses that are proven and accomplished that, you know, I couldn't be confident with using Mindframe high in my exotics. Best way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. All right.
So we'll have some closing thoughts. You want to start or you want me to start?
I started every other horse, so why don't you take the lead here?
All right. Well, Jim, first things first, love being a teammate with you here at Past the Wire. I'm happy we did this show together. I was looking forward to it. My mind has been absolutely engrossed and inundated with racing past performances and everything over the last few days. I'm excited and pumped for what lies ahead of us. I do want to tell the audience, it's already been published. I put together a full card breakdown, handicap analysis for Thursday's card, which is the opening day at Saratoga for this Belmont Racing Festival. So check that out. Don't forget to check out John's, especially if you've been invited to his Belmont Stakes seminar. I think you'll find that very interesting and very informative. And please share thoughts in the comments if you can, for lots that I shared or lots that Jim shared. We'd like to know what you're thinking. And if you're interested in me providing, perhaps even with Jim, a pick 5 on Friday, because remember, I did the full card for Thursday, and we just gave you the Belmont Stakes. And let me know if there's interest, because Friday's card is beautiful too, and I'm going to keep working. But just want to thank you for being in attendance and watching this show, and subscribe, share, like, because that's where we're part of, we're under the social media umbrella, and Past the Wire is growing every single day. So we appreciate your involvement, and let me bring it over to Jim, and I'll see you next time myself.
Yeah, this has been great, Gio. I know we've spoken a bunch over the phone. We've done a past show or two with you and I and John, and it was good to do this, the two of us, and kind of run through this field. Just kind of echoing everything Gio said. Tons of great content around the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival. It should be a great 4 days of racing up here. I'm excited to be at the track for a good chunk of the weekend. Sierra Leone is my strongest opinion over the 4 days. Everything runs through him, as it did for me on Derby Day as well, when I went home empty-handed. So hopefully we reverse that on Saturday and string together a couple of nice tickets with him as the winning centerpiece, hopefully.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to add before we say goodbye. Obviously, we may provide more content before the weekend, specifically on Friday and/or maybe Sunday. I'm not sure right now. But look forward to so much more we're going to share. Next month in July, we have the Haskell right here. I'm going to have a significant involvement at the Haskell. I'm going to be in the press box. I'm going to be on the grounds. I'm going to be in the paddock. And, we'll be putting a show here on Past the Wire. And obviously, lots more to follow with the opening of the regular Saratoga meet. And that guy, Jim, is blessed to be living in Saratoga, which if I was living there, I'd be incapable of having anything else going on in my life but racing. If I was there, if I lived there.
Yeah, well, we do clear the summer schedule, so there's very limited travel, no long weekends away or anything like that, so we can be at the racetrack as often as possible. So all good stuff. Thanks again, Gio. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, please like, subscribe, share the Past the Wire TV YouTube page. And don't forget to bet the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival with Amwager. Check out amwager.com for all of their promos and offers leading into the Belmont Stakes. Gio, have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you again soon.
You too, my man. Everybody, God bless. Good night, sleep, and let's go get them.
You're watching Past the Wire TV.